do you know that Africans didn't always have the use of A to Z alphabets? What did we then actually use? How do you think we communicated and wrote letters back then?
So not the ABCs?
You think your great-great-great-great-grandfathers didn't have a way to write to one another?
Oh, I have no idea,
Yeah.
because I don't think it's something that's widely spoken about. We speak a lot about our African spoken languages, but we don't really talk about how it translated in the written form.
Do you think it's important that we should know what our ancestors wrote, what format they wrote in?
100%.
Or do you think it's like, okay, it doesn't matter anymore?
No.
Like some people,
I think it's important because it's obviously a lot of African history erasure, and we need to understand that intelligence has always existed on the African continent, and reading and writing has also been part of those structures.
Yeah, absolutely. If we don't know our historical alphabets, it means that we're literally assuming that we as Africans have always been illiterate, that we haven't really been sophisticated in education and in learning. And that's one of the biggest things in Africa, that we always assimilate to a Western type of education, or we think foreign education is actually better than our forms of education. I was reading this very interesting article by Samuel Phillips, a writer, a graphic designer, photographer, songwriter and singer, who actually looks at Africans' writings. And he says, you know what, the biggest misconception is that we don't have any of these particular writings, and that we actually started right now in terms of engaging in writing. But he actually throws back the development of writing to 5,000 to 3,000 BC. And he starts with what is called the proto-Saharan type of writing, which came even before the rise of Egyptians and Sumerians, and was actually a form of writing that was very, very big in sub-Saharan Africa. I've got some scribblings. Did you see the scribblings I sent you via your WhatsApp?
I did, and I was like, I have no idea what any of this means.
Yeah, the scribblings look like nothing. They look absolutely like we can't interpret them, right? But there are these kind of writing. In this particular type of writing, the proto-Saharan, there's a lot of lines, there's a lot of crosses, there's squares, there's a little bit of dots in the formation of it, and it was usually on rock because then paper wasn't that available here on the African continent, of course. So rocks were kind of a very important part of our writing. And then they have something that developed into what is called Wadi al-Hall, and this is an interesting type of writing. It was actually something that took place before the development of Egyptian hieroglyphics, and was basically in southern Egypt, where there is what is called Waset and Abdu areas, and it's a resemblance of hieroglyphics to actually its early development, and that's very interesting. And then you move into what we now know as hieroglyphics.
Yes,
hieroglyphics
and
are very more
taught,
popular.
Yeah, that's what we were taught in school, that Africans or in Egypt, they were hieroglyphics, and so we heard about that, but I don't think we really associated those hieroglyphics with the rest of the continent. And now that you speak about it, I didn't really immediately think about it when you spoke about written language for Africans, but hieroglyphics was exactly that. Yeah,
hieroglyphics is actually very, very sophisticated, and actually a more of a pronounced way using symbols to actually write. Some people know that era as a Kemetic hieroglyphics as well, and I think they were actually around a symbolism and imagery. That's one thing that actually stands out. It's more developed than just the crosses and lines that we see in the previous areas of writing. And then there's also other different types of hieroglyphics actually that's represented between 5000 BC. And there's so many different ones, right? Actually, if you do research this, you'll see that in different regions they had different types of writings. If you think about Ethiopia, if you think about the Nubian groupings as well, that's also a very different type of writings. And most of them are very, very kind of important in terms of us understanding that our histories didn't just start now, but have always been there. And also our intellect and us trying to communicate through the written word has always been something that is interesting. Here we've also got our form of hieroglyphics by the Khoi and the San here in South Africa. We call them hieroglyphics here in South Africa?
I don't think we call them hieroglyphics.
What do they call them? I forgot the term. But I know the San and Khoi have their own writings that are very unique to our way of writing here. I just forgot what we call those particular writings. But I think they are cited as hieroglyphic in their nature because they're on the rock format. So yeah, man, it's interesting to know that we as Africans are not just who we are right now. We've always been, and we've always communicated in sophisticated ways. What's your take on that, our ways of writing in the past? And do you think that we should revisit those ways and maybe explore them a little bit more? Maybe we don't have to write in those ways, but definitely learn a little bit more about those particular histories. Let us know on +27 634 069 126.